Got it.
Recording in progress.
Cool.
What's going
Hello.
on?
Happy New Year.
Oh my gosh. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
Look at your calendar on your wall.
I
Somebody's
know.
making
It's
some
curling
plans.
up. The edges are curling up. It's like, yeah. I'm
Nice job.
thinking I might put it on the back wall, move the sofa so I have more room to perform whatever it is I'm going to perform this year.
We have to go back through all of our podcasts and like flag all of the different ways you're going to rearrange this room. And we still have pictures on the floor. When are
Oh
you
my
going to hang those? Can
God.
you put that on your plan for 24?
I can, but I mean, I like the stacked against the wall look.
Oh, okay, great.
It's
If
kind
that's
of
a thing.
cool. Yeah, it's a thing, I think. Yeah.
It's like saying I could hang them, but
But I'm too cool to hang
I
them.
don't know.
I don't
Maybe
need to hang the
tomorrow.
art. Yeah, no, I
Mañana.
do like that look, but yes, there are lots of options. But yes, that's quite a good thing. If I have nothing to do, which we'll come to in this conversation, but if I have nothing to do, then I could do that. I could hang them. It does require making a decision.
Choices.
Ugh.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. So,
Nice.
cool. So, what are we talking about today? I'm going to just bring up some notes. I
Well,
don't
I
mean
can tell you.
regurgitate them. I mean, I'm just going to find them on the phone. Go.
Boundaries.
Yay.
What, why is it such a difficult concept? How come
Um,
we think boundaries are ultimatums?
shall we start
Yeah.
by defining what each of us or together we
Yep.
think a boundary is?
Let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to have a bash at that?
I was like, she's going to go first.
I
Okay.
mean, I can, but
Let's see if I can craft a boundary is something I create for myself to keep me safe, healthy, and it doesn't require anybody else to know about it.
ooh, I
How'd
like
I
that
do?
little. You did really well. I like the bit you added at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So something you create for yourself.
Hmm.
It has a purpose. Suggested safety,
Health.
health. Yeah. Um, yeah, I agree with those things. It feels like um, a fence or a line in the sand, something that I have made a choice or a decision about.
Yes.
And I am making a distinction between this and that. So
Yes.
between distinguishing something, X, whatever it is, let's take your example of safety. Within this circle or this side of this fence or this line in the sand is safety, and over there is not. So there's something for
Right.
me about distinguishing between
Yeah.
what's happening over there
Yep.
and what's happening on this side of the boundary.
Yep. So there's two things I want to add to that. I love the
Mm-hmm.
way that you just said all of that. Um, that the boundary, let's say that this is my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one who places this, and the boundary is about whether or not I step across it. It's not about whether or not you. And I find that the misconception that's really common is we run around the world and we're like, but I had this boundary and you crossed it. And
Yeah.
that's not what a boundary is. A boundary
Yeah.
is like, I'm the only one that knows about it, probably. And it's about whether or not I step over it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I already
Yeah.
forgot the second thing I was going to say.
Oh,
It'll come back.
it will come back. Yeah. And I think that almost feels like the how to play with my boundaries part of the conversation, possibly.
Yeah.
The who is doing what with the
Right.
boundary.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
And step one is to decide, taking again your examples of safety or health, what makes me feel safe? What makes
Yeah.
me feel unsafe?
That's the second part I was going to mention.
Go.
It is about a boundary, a fence, right? A line in the sand is about protection. And a lot of times a boundary is how do I protect myself? And I don't necessarily need a boundary when it's just me operating in the world. I do have them for that, but where they're really, really powerful is when I'm in relationship with others. I really find that boundaries protect the relationship from the dents and the bruises that we inflict on it because we're human.
Mm. That's interesting because I was thinking about, so we've established that a boundary is a line in the sand.
Yep.
It's what I'm a yes to and what I'm a no to. I want to feel safe, for example, or I want to feel and be healthy.
Mm.
So I'm a yes to this, I'm a no to that. And so I'm putting a boundary or boundaries in place that will support me being a yes to my health, and that will keep away me being a no to my health, for
Yep.
example, or insert the word safety or anything else that you like. And I think we often think about boundaries in relation to other people.
Yes.
And I have been thinking about boundaries in relation to myself.
Mhm.
And that feels like the place for me to practice. Not the only place for me to practice, but it feels like it's very much a place that I am and want to practice at the moment, not least because I have, in the last 24 hours, seen myself completely blast through my own boundaries
Yes.
and just,
Mine are very mushy and
yes,
soft.
step over that line, trample through, over the fence, trash it, and, career out into not honoring my own boundaries with myself. So I think actually they're powerful. I agree with you. They're really powerful in relationships, and I include in that my relationship with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote down there's probably more than two, but the two places for boundaries is personal and relational.
Mm, yeah.
I think most people, um, most of my clients come to boundaries because they're challenged in relationship with someone else, a boss, a child, a spouse, parent,
Mm,
sibling, neighbor.
mm.
So that's usually where the conversation pops up.
Yes, and I think interestingly, you could think about that as again coming back to self, and this might be a sort of a little tug of war that we have in this conversation where I
Sure.
keep pulling it back to self because that's what I'm really focused on and interested in at the moment. But I had a conversation with a client yesterday who was saying, well, fuck them. This person is an asshole because they've stepped over my boundary.
Yes.
And actually, that is, and this person's, like a lot of us, they're planning out 2024. They're thinking, right, okay, this time next year or the end of 2024, when we have a conversation, what do I want to be saying that I have achieved and done and created for myself and how I've treated myself? And in that process, they're noticing obviously where other people, because it's so easy for us to notice where someone else is doing it wrong.
Yeah. It's easier to see it in others than for
Yeah.
us to see it in ourselves, of
Yeah.
course.
Like, you're not treating me properly. That was
Right.
not the right thing to
Yes.
do or say.
They're
Um,
disrespecting me.
yes.
Yeah. Big
Yeah, they're
one.
selfish because they
Hmm.
can't see that, I have a
Yes.
boundary in place here. However, the real core of that for me at the moment, I'm really open to changing my mind, but at the moment it feels to me like actually it's about this woman.
I agree with you. The
Yeah.
boundaries are always about
Mm.
me, they're for
Yes.
me, and they're
Yeah.
by me.
Yes.
The
And I am
place,
the one who maintains them or doesn't.
yeah,
Mm.
I think, and I think yes to all of that. And I think the reason I brought it up is that my clients don't come to me and they're like, I've stepped over my own boundaries. I don't know why I can't
No.
maintain and defend they're coming to me because they're like, those people are making my life fill in the blank, difficult, challenging, miserable. It's like,
Mm.
okay, are they?
Mm.
If you,
Yeah.
the example could be like, if you tolerate somebody open hand slapping you across your face
Mm.
and they keep doing it, then like, there may be something that you need to shift.
Yeah.
Don't put your face in front of their hand anymore.
Yeah. The question I'm jotting down is what part am I playing in this? Or if I was speaking to a client, what part are you playing in this?
Yeah.
So something else I was sort of thinking about is what we gain and what we lose.
Yeah.
So kind of coming
Great.
to that, looking at that, what I'm a yes to and what I'm a no to. So in relationship, if we're talking about relationships with others, which might be an easier place
Yeah.
for Tracy
Yep.
to kind of get a
We
handle
have to
on
say
this.
Sharafat from now on
Okay.
because we know Sharafat is watching
Okay.
and she's so lovely and she comments and shares openly about herself based on what she hears.
I
What's
think
up, Sharafat?
Sharafat would get both sides of this, but so let's leave that out then. The Tracy, what Tracy will and won't get.
Not to
I'm
offend
making
Tracy.
yes, I'm making decisions about what she'll get. That's awful. Okay, remove that from the minutes, please. But yes, we get something when we're in relation with people, don't we? In relationship with someone. If I am very so for example, if I'm being treated badly by somebody, I determine that their behavior towards me is bad. By me tolerating it rather than putting a boundary in place, by me tolerating their behavior, I get something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such
Let's
as,
let's use a real example.
okay, I'm not prepared to disclose
Oh, I have
any of my real
thousands. I have
examples. I'm not
thousands.
going to disclose any of my personal ones here today. Go then, give me an example.
So the place I learned about boundaries was in Al-Anon, which is for families and friends of alcoholics. It's a 12-step
Mm.
program that mirrors AA. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Travel together. And at the time, I had two little babies, both in diapers. My husband's drinking had gone like exponential.
Mm.
And I was desperate. So you walk in the room and you're like, tell me what I need to do. And they're like, we're so glad you're here.
Mm.
And you're like, that was not helpful. We'll see you next week. And I'm like, ugh. So then I come back the next week. I'm like, okay, so tell me what to do. And they were like, we're just so glad you're here. We'll see you next week, right? And I was like, what is wrong with these people? I need to know. Do I leave him? Does it like, what can I say to make him stop? So what they helped me to discover was that a boundary was for me and by me. And if I'm tolerating this behavior of his, which is to, be irresponsible and absent because of his drinking, then that's on me because I'm tolerating it. And I have to make a decision. Am I going to continue to tolerate it? And if not, what does that even look like? Because I've been tolerating it our whole marriage. So now what do I do? And so the very first boundary I ever built with the help of these lovely people in Al Anon, which I will forever be grateful to them, was if my husband and I had made an agreement that if he was going to drink, he couldn't do it at home because we had babies and he was obnoxious. So, like, you're a grown man. If you're going to drink, you're going to drink, but like, just don't do it here. So that was the agreement. And he, if it, if he drank at home, then like I would have to make a decision because like the agreement was between the two of us, but at the end of the day, it was really like I don't want to be around him when he's drunk.
Mm.
That was my boundary. So my boundary was if I believe you've been drinking, then I will ask you to leave. And then the backup plan was if you don't leave, right, then I will grab the kids
Mm.
in my go bag and we will leave.
Mm.
So building that boundary was really, really challenging.
Yeah. May I say something?
You bet.
What what was interesting in there for me was that the boundary started by being named, we have an agreement that you won't drink at home.
Mm-hmm.
But when you traced it back or went a little deeper, it was actually something slightly different, which
Yeah.
was all about you, which
Mm-hmm.
was, I don't want to be around you when you're drinking.
Yes.
I find that interesting
So
because
then what
that is all
happened?
about you, not about him.
It is. I couldn't stand to be around him when he was drinking.
Mm.
So then um it happened where he's like drunk at home
Mm.
and it happened a lot and um I just look at him and be like, "So, would you like me to call you a cab?"
Mm.
And he would say, "No, I'm not drunk." And I'd say, "Okay, cool. Um, either you leave or I'm gonna go. It's up to you." And then
Mm.
he would always leave,
Mm.
always. And then he would threaten to drive, and I'd be like, "Cool. If you get in that car, I'm gonna have to call the police because I
Mm.
don't want you to kill yourself or anybody else." And so then he would call a cab, or sometimes he would walk. But yeah. And
Mm.
the first time I said, like the first time I defended my boundary, my blood pressure probably was like sky high. My heart rate was probably at 200. I was terrified.
Mm.
But with practice, it got a lot easier. And it was all about me. And it was like the most empowering thing because I was like, I don't have to be around this.
What made the blood pressure go high? What
To
was
the,
the thinking?
yeah. Um, I don't know. I think my hunch is that I'm such a people pleaser that I was afraid he was gonna, well, I was probably afraid he was gonna leave and never come back. Um, or that he, it would reinforce like I would be left behind because I've got that fear, right, that I'm going to get left behind or that I'm unlovable somehow. So it probably touched that nerve, that really raw nerve from,
Mm.
little Allison,
Mm.
which is why I like I can't even remember how old I was. Let's see. I was 38. 38 was the first time I actually set a boundary that I can like consciously recall and defended
Mm.
it. So it was terrifying. I'd never done it before.
Yeah, because I was guessing while you were speaking what the cost
Yeah.
thought was. What was
Yeah,
the thought that would,
I thought it was gonna cost me my marriage.
yeah. And for me, because I have a different
Hmm.
raw nerve to yours, for
Yes.
me, I was thinking, oh, I wouldn't be able to, or no, I wouldn't be able to. I would struggle to put that boundary in place. And I struggle, full stop, to put boundaries in place because I think my boundaries will cause harm to others.
Yes.
And your, you know,
My
core,
boundary is like
I'm
people
going
are
to be
gonna leave
left.
me. Yes.
Yes, people are going to leave me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. Um, that's the sort of the nub, the core piece, the seed
Yeah.
that is then, you know, permeating how you do or don't put a boundary in place, or
Yeah.
how you are or are not able to
Right.
maintain a boundary that you have chosen, that you know is good for you.
Which leads me to the distinction between a boundary and an ultimatum. Boundaries are
Mm.
really hard because it's I have to own the whole thing. If I feel like you've been drinking, that's not really, but like if I feel unsafe, if I feel irritated, like those were the feelings that came up for me when he was drinking. If I feel like annoyed, irritated, contemptuous, ooh, then I will leave. then I will ask you to leave or I will leave.
Mm.
The ultimatum is if you are drunk in the house, then you're going to have to leave. I don't have to own any of that.
Mm.
That's all about him. And then he can be the jerk and then he can be the problem. But as soon
Yes.
as I come to me, like if I feel contempt towards you because, I don't like your drinking, boom. Now I got to carry it.
Yeah. And if you do boundaries in the way of an ultimatum,
Yeah.
where it's you have to do the thing,
Yeah.
you're at the effect of someone else's behavior.
Yes. Which reinforces that
Well,
you have no
victimhood, or
power. Yeah.
yes, that you have no power at all. And then it's all facing outward, it's all projected outward. They're the asshole, they're the awful person,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't respect me, we
Mm-hmm.
get to be a victim because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't do the thing that we asked them to do.
Yeah.
And
And
it's different. Go.
imagine that inside the context of a marriage with an addict. That I'm like, you suck, you're wrong, you're a drunk, you're screwing everything up. And imagine what that then does, the impact that has on the addict brain. The addict brain is like, might as well drink. She's the problem, right? Like it actually fed into his drinking. And he'll say that, like if he were sitting right here, he'd be like, yeah, you were the
Mm,
problem that my
mm,
drinking could solve.
mm.
So it was,
So both parties are then looking outward, yes,
yes,
and saying, you're the problem. No,
yes,
you're the problem.
right.
And there's lots of finger pointing,
Yeah.
and ownership, responsibility, empowerment, personal
Not available. It's not,
agency.
you can't access it.
It's not even on the table,
Right.
because we're looking over there and saying, I'm going to be okay when you do the thing,
Yeah.
whatever the thing is.
Yeah. I will share that he did leave. Like he left our home and moved out. It did
Mm,
happen. My deepest
mm,
fear happened.
mm.
So that's why boundaries suck because they're really hard and they may create the thing that we are terrified to experience.
Yes. My example, my fresh example, and I have been questioning, is this really about boundaries? And I think it is.
Mm,
Um, mine is a health and well-being related example. I want to create healthy morning routine for myself, which requires a healthy bedtime routine before I get to the morning. So it happens there, and then I do the sleeping, and then I wake up and have the healthy morning routine, which then sustains me throughout my day and helps me to create the other things that
mm-hmm,
I want to create. And so yesterday, I just blasted through a healthy boundary that I've put in place for myself,
mm,
which is to, in service of my commitment, health, well-being, morning routine, evening routine, is to go to bed early.
mm-hmm.
You can tell me whether this fits into boundaries or not.
Okie doke.
And so I was seated at the table having my dinner at 7 o'clock. I'd gotten up at 5, so really well on track to go to bed at a decent hour, 9 o'clock in bed, lights out.
Okay.
Um, I then proceeded to watch Netflix.
Mm,
I was watching a series that I have already watched fully from start to finish over a period of time. I watched it, Ali, until 1:30 in the morning. That is, and I was watching it whilst I was eating at 7. So that is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 6 hours
Yeah.
of watching something. There was the odd break. I went to the bathroom.
Sure.
I messaged you.
Yes.
I mean, those things took minutes. 6 hours
Yeah.
of watching something I've already watched,
Okay.
albeit a long while ago, but I've already watched this.
Yeah. That seems significant to you.
Yes, waving my
I've already
pencil
done
at you.
it.
I've already done it. It's like it wasn't anything new. And I was thinking about boundaries and just thinking, wow, I've just completely blasted through this boundary that I have set for myself, which is in service of, you know,
Yeah.
of my brain, of my mind, of my
Mm,
creativity, of my, so it's in service of a lot of things.
yeah.
It's not just I'm going to get a bed early.
Right.
It's, it's part of the picture of the things I'm creating for myself this year. And I just steamrolled through it. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, maybe I need you to ask me a question, but I felt that I lost something and I gained something. I I kind of lost hours, I lost sleep. There was a knock-on impact.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up at the time I wanted to wake up this morning. I didn't do the exercise. I
Hmm.
did some exercise, but I didn't do what I had planned to do this morning.
Hmm.
So a whole pile of stuff went out the window. I also kind of lost a bit of faith in myself and a
Hmm.
tiny bit of respect, or maybe a lot of respect. But I got that familiar feeling of, you can't do this.
Yes. Yes.
You're a loser. You
So
can't do this thing.
what did you gain?
What I gained was a numbing experience. I gained stepping off.
I suspect that there's something deeper that you gained.
Um, okay. So I know that I gained numbing. It
Yep.
was like someone had injected me with something and I was just there like this zombie.
Yeah.
Like, and I kept saying just one more episode, just one more episode. And I just and And I also noticed, this is a sidebar or a side note. I noticed that on Netflix, I don't get to choose to press play the next thing. It happens automatically. And there's
Yes,
this
it does.
slider, and it's like, I'm like, and it's like,
Yeah.
can I press stop? And the slider goes,
Too
boom.
late.
There's another one. I'm like, okay, buckle up. I'm in for another 25 minutes of the episode. So there's some sort of handing over. I get to hand over responsibility. I get to be a victim
Hmm.
to the technology. I get to blame. I was like, oh, back in the olden days, we only got one episode of anything we were watching per week. So I got a bit kind of like on my high horse in the kitchen at 1:30 in the morning. This isn't my fault. This is technology's fault because we
Those
only
guys
got
at
one
Netflix,
episode.
just
Yeah,
jerks.
yeah,
Yeah.
we only got one episode, and then you had to wait till the next week.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to exercise any self-control. I couldn't get hold of the other episode.
Yeah.
Back in the day, obviously I'm at like 100 years old. Back in the day, you might get a repeat, but I mean that wasn't even available. You didn't know when that was coming, so I didn't have to exercise any self-control. So I gained blaming last
Hmm.
night. I got to blame, like, finger point at Netflix and technology and how it was better in the olden days.
When you start to point your finger outwards, it serves a purpose, right?
Mm,
Always. Because then I don't have
mm,
to point the finger at me.
mm,
If if we were to examine that, there's something that like is happening deep down underneath the surface, right?
mm,
And you said it right when you started talking about what you were that you were numbing, Oh, you said it when you said, "What did I lose? I lost time." And I
Mm,
actually became disappointed in myself,
mm,
wondering if I could do it. I
mm.
could like uphold this boundary.
Yeah.
The
Are you
minute,
leading me somewhere? What
yep,
is the thing? Tell me
yep,
the
the
thing, because
minute you
I'm not
said
seeing it.
that, I thought, aha, her psyche, the unconscious part of us, part of you, probably is leading you back to that deep-seated belief that you
Yes.
cannot do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
The
you're
familiar. Yeah.
that's what we gain. We
Yeah. Yeah.
gain
The familiar
proof.
pattern. Yeah. Proof, Mia, you are a loser. You're a
Yep,
jerk. You're an idiot. You're a
yep,
fool. You
yes,
have no willpower.
yep,
You know, all the American and the British terminology. You
yeah,
you can't do this thing. There you go. What are we? Day 5? Forget it. 2024.
yeah.
It's
You're
a
off the
dud.
hook.
Yeah. It's not gonna.
You don't
Yes.
have to do it
Yes.
now
I get
because
to
you
be a
can't.
victim. I get to be a victim. Netflix are controlling me.
Yes,
I get to be a victim of that. And I get to prove the story that I'm never going to create the things I want this year, for example.
yep. It's your version of we're all going to be in a van down by the river.
Yes. Yes,
Like
it is my
one
version
night
of your
of
story. Yes.
indulging in
Yes.
Netflix means
Mm,
you
mm,
literally can never have the life that you
yes.
want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus,
And
right? Like,
I have um decided that I'm going to cancel Netflix. I made this decision a week ago, not last night. I'm going to cancel Netflix and cancel Amazon. I don't tend to watch television, like national broadcasting. I don't tend to watch national broadcasting. So I was like, I'm going to cancel these um, because I'm going to be on my own a lot
yep,
for the next 4 or 5 months. And I can see, if I look at the run up to Christmas, I can see that the boundaries, these routines that I've already
yeah,
said, morning and evening routine, that I'm putting in place to ensure that I can sustain myself during the day and achieve the things I want to achieve. I've seen this kind of like
yep.
numbing out in front of Netflix. I don't even have to hold the remote because it just keeps
It does.
flipping for me. I don't have to do anything. And I'm like, ugh. When I'm spending more time on my own, that's going to be really comforting because I get to numb out.
Hmm.
I get to be a victim. Poor me. I don't have to take responsibility for gaps, holes,
Yeah.
failings, lack of
Yes.
anything in my life.
Yes.
Um, and it's comforting. It's like sucking on a teat or a nipple or a sorry, I'm sorry to say
Where are we
nipple.
even go? I think we need to time out.
It's the
If we,
comfort.
I'm real
Pause.
uncomfortable now.
But it's that the comfort
Yes.
of
Yes.
breastfeeding. You're
How about a thumb or a
yeah.
nook?
Well, we move on to the thumb, but or maybe
Right.
the thumb goes in immediately. But whatever. When at whatever point we start sucking our thumbs, I never did it. Get back onto the nipple and get on track. It's the comfort of just I don't
Yep.
have to do very much at all,
Yes.
and I'm just comforted. I'm soothed. And I'm like, duh, I don't want to spend. And I can easily see that it would happen that I'm going to spend
Yeah.
4 or 5 months numbing out in the evening for all of the reasons I've just said. And that's not what I want.
Yeah.
But and I have other reasons, I've created other reasons around why I'm going to cancel these two things. I can redirect them, it's like, I don't know what it costs, like £35 a month. Like
Yeah.
so I'm going to redirect that money somewhere else where I want to put that money. So I've created other reasons and motivations around it.
Yeah.
But I want something other than that, and so I want to put a boundary in place. I don't know whether the greater challenge um, is to keep those two things there and like move my hand away from the remote and not use them. But I don't know that that's particularly an interesting or useful avenue to go down. I know what I want to create
Yeah.
in terms of morning and
Yep.
evening routine, and I know
That,
why.
yep. And that gets in the way.
Yes.
That's essentially what a boundary is it's like, okay, I want to create some success here. I want to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And I know that
Yes.
if I have access, I have the same thing with food that you have with Netflix.
Mm.
Like if it's in the house, it will be in my mouth at some point.
Yeah.
I just, so part of my boundary is like, I just can't have, I choose not to put foods that are high carb, high fat, high salt content in my
Mm.
home.
Yeah.
And because I know how I want to feel. I want to feel
Mm.
empowered. I want to
Mm.
feel proud of myself. I want to
Mm.
feel like, I want to feel good in my body and I want to feel good in my energy. And that type of food just doesn't, it's so indulgent for me. I know
Mm.
if it's in the house, I will. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of thinking back to the, yours is food,
Yep.
mine, it turns out at the moment, is Netflix. Um, and that core piece of, by indulging
Hmm.
in Netflix, I get to reinforce the story that I'm a
Can't
loser,
do it.
I'm an underachiever, I can't do the thing.
Yes.
I'm sort of wondering now, okay, so I can shut down Netflix, I can cut the plug off the television or whatever, I can do those things.
Yes.
Um, my survival mechanism, that story
Yep.
will find
Yes.
its way through some other crack in the crazy paving, some other,
Could.
and will it will be looking for the light. It will be looking for a way
Yeah.
to express itself.
You don't feel like you can't do stuff because of Netflix. So
Say that again.
getting you, it's too
Oh,
many negatives.
that's a triple
You
negative.
feel like you can't do things because that's part of your deep, developmental wiring. Netflix
Yes.
is just a symptom.
Yes, yes, it's catnip. It's catnip in the
Yep.
corner of the room.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, and what it does is it takes me away from having to face that story.
Right.
Ironically, it feeds that story,
Of
but the
course it does.
thinking is, oh, it will take me away from
Yeah.
having to face the story
Right.
that I can't, or what considers, my my internal working model doesn't think it's a story. It thinks it's a fact.
Of course.
Thinks it's a fact that I
Yeah.
can't,
And
create
you've
the
got
things I
lots of
want.
proof.
Yeah. And so it sort of takes me away from that, soothes me, makes me a victim, and I
Yeah.
don't have to take any
Yep.
responsibility. I can shrug that all off. The irony is it is actually reinforcing
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Um, and I want something else for myself. And there will be a cost, Ali. Go, you had something coming up.
Well, it will pop up. You were saying that it's going to pop up other places. It
Mm,
absolutely will. And the
mm.
thing that I think most of us want is for that story to stop popping up. How do I make
Yes.
that story go away? Much like
Yes.
me going into Al-Anon and being like, how do I make my husband stop drinking? And they
Yes.
were like, you're so
Yeah,
sweet. We'll
exactly.
see you next
Yeah.
week. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
will.
Perfect. Yeah.
It will always pop up. And the thing that
Mm,
I think, because we can't get rid of it, if
mm,
that's true, I believe
mm,
that to be true. We can't get rid of it.
mhm.
Then the next best thing that I can hope for is that I can quiet it. And the way that I quiet it is by actually shining a light on it.
Yes, and quietening it, and also, um, yeah, being brave enough to shine a light on it and have a look at it. And also, if we think in terms of our our neurology, our brains, our neuroplasticity, that I have a well-worn, highly myelinated path
Yep.
driven by that story.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like all roads lead to Rome from that story. I can
Yes.
get there any old way, I can get back to
Yes.
that story any way you
Yep.
like.
Yes.
And so part of my commitment and these boundaries, which I feel like, is there another word? Is it routines? Am I really talking about routines? But actually, I think it does tie into boundaries. I'm creating boundaries for myself in service of what I want to create. And what I want to create is not driven by that story of myself, that story about myself. It is driven by a different story. So I am, by creating these routines, practicing, exploring, experimenting with them, by putting boundaries in my in place for myself, I am, all of that is in service of and driven by this other story that I am cultivating within myself, which is a yes you can story.
Look at that. Well done. Did you have that already? You just wanted to say it so you could show the card.
Well, I found it in my drawer, and I use it as a bookmark. My friend Tamsin gave it to me. So yes, so what I'm doing is, you're saying sort of like shine a light on it and it will help to minimize it. And I'm saying yes, and I'm actually actively practicing, cultivating, and myelinating a different story.
Right.
And the more that I practice that, the more that story becomes myelinated in my brain. That creates faster, the myelin creates a faster connectivity, and like, oh, that's the quickest route to Rome, let's go there. So that's what I'm doing for myself. That's what I want to create, that this becomes the fastest pathway, not so yes I can becomes the fastest pathway, not no you can't, Mia.
What one of the questions that we wanted to answer today was like, how do I know I need a boundary? And you've just articulated that I know I need one when I want to have a different experience of life, wherever.
Nice.
So let me land the story that we started, the example that we started with. So I put the boundary in place. I take ownership for the experience I want to have, which I want a home that feels safe and I feel connected to my partner. That's what I wanted. I can't connect with somebody who's drinking. Not only that, it's such a turnoff. It was just like, gross, get out of the house, right? So that was what I wanted to create. So then I had to put a boundary in. I didn't have to. I chose to put a boundary in place that made it so that that could be created, because we couldn't create it the other way, right? So you put that boundary in place, and then the addict is just like, deuces, I'm out. I'd rather drink than deal with this nonsense. So then he leaves. My worst nightmare comes to life. So now I'm alone with my babies and just horrified at my future, right? So fine. Thank God for Al-Anon, because then you just keep showing up and you've got a sponsor in that program. So you're calling her every night like, ugh. And I had a therapist at that time and I had really great friends and all of that. So we make it through that time. And it actually created, there were two things that happened. One was, once I created the boundary and I had taken responsibility for the experience I wanted. This is weird. I actually I had access to being able to love him again. And I'm not really sure how that happened, but I will say that it did happen. So that's the first thing. The second thing that happened was when I started taking responsibility for myself, my husband found recovery, because it's almost like it was contagious. Like I wasn't pointing a finger at him anymore, which meant he didn't have to have an equal and opposite, finger pointing at me. It was like suddenly I took my finger away and he was like, I don't know what to do with this. And then the only place to land was to look at himself. So that boundary actually served him as well inside that relationship. And he did go to rehab. And that was in 2008. We're still married. We just celebrated 25 years. It hasn't been a cakewalk, like, let's be honest. However, we both have committed to having the experience of marriage that we deeply desire. We both are doing that, and we're putting our boundaries in place and owning it. So how do you know you need a boundary? When you want to have an experience and you're not having that experience.
Yeah, I really like that, Ali. I love that. I love that as being the clue that lets me know. that I need
And
to
if
put
you're
a
not
boundary
that
in
far
place.
along, the
Yeah.
bigger clue, the one that I use with my clients, is when they say they're resentful. The minute I
Mm,
hear that word or I sense that in their language or their body language or whatever, I'm like, ah,
mm,
the resentment is, we're in victim town.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I like you said, I don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
It seems that it happened that you were able to fall back in love or able to love him again because you weren't blaming him and holding him responsible for your experience.
Yeah. I'll say that I was able to love him again. I was not in love with
Mm.
him at that point,
Yeah, yeah, I
but I
corrected
was
that.
able
Yeah.
to see him as a human who didn't want to be the way he was being. I could
Mm.
finally see that. I
Yeah.
could almost, it's almost like I had like bad lenses and I would put on a new set of glasses and suddenly I was like,
Mm.
oh, he's not all the things my mind made up about him. Like he's not emotionally absent and he's not doing it on purpose and he's not trying to bamboozle me and he's not disrespecting the merit. Like those are all kind of like how it felt, but at the end of the day he wasn't getting up in the morning and being like, I cannot wait to mess with her again. It
Yeah.
was his addiction. He was
Mm.
internally in at war with himself. And
Mm.
once I was able to like take responsibility for myself, I could see it and I could genuinely care about him and feel
Mm.
love and compassion towards what he was experiencing without owning any of it. It's almost like
Mm.
the boundary helped me be me and
Mm.
him be him. And once I was over here, then I could see, which seems counterintuitive, that I'd
Mm.
have to like actually back away and get into myself to be able to see the other person. That's what
I've
happened.
just gotten so much from myself from what you've
Oh,
just
good.
said.
Okay.
And obviously, you're talking about something, if we were to rate these on scales, marriage and alcoholism and are more important than Netflix. However, for myself, what
Yes.
I've seen is I am both those people. I'm both you and him.
Yes. Yes.
I can see that for myself, that I'm addicted to this thing. I'm using the word maybe more lightly,
Sure.
because I'm not watching Netflix now or this morning. Um, but but there is that kind of like addictive quality,
Yes.
and I can see that I'm not getting up in the morning and thinking, how can I fuck with Mia? How can I fuck her day up?
Yeah.
How can I
Right.
make her feel really shitty about herself by the end of the day?
Yes.
Um, and by taking a step back and looking at what it is I want to create and what boundaries can I put in place to serve and support myself, I'm able to have more love and compassion for myself.
Yes.
That's what that's what I
Yes.
got from what you said for me personally.
And it's like a ring of fire. I'm not going to put a boundary in place and then magically be like, yay! It is, you put the boundary in place, you defend the boundary. It is not great in the beginning. When my husband left and moved into a hotel,
Mm,
I was like, I think I have made a terrible mistake. I shouldn't
mm,
have said anything. I should have just let
mm,
it go. The drinking
mm,
wasn't that bad. I made
yeah.
myself wrong for all of it. Like I had to
Mm,
jump through that ring of fire.
mm,
Once we got to the other side and he then chose, and that didn't happen fast, right?
mm.
So I also want to set the expectation that like once you put the boundary in place, it's not like butterflies and rainbows. It's
No,
actually, there's like a dip breakdown
yes,
moving.
and I can see that again for myself in
Yeah.
my less um, dramatic, important
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
example of
Yeah. Yeah.
Netflix, that um, it won't necessarily be easy.
No,
And
when you have to face
mm,
whatever it is that
well, it's
Netflix
fear of
gets,
being, yeah, it's fear of being on my own. It's
yeah,
fear of um, not using my time. oh, the irony, not using my time effectively. So it's much more effective to just zone out for 6 hours. Fear of failure, fear of confirming
Yep.
the story. So there are lots of things like that I don't want to face. And by making this choice and maintaining the boundary that I want for myself around
Yep.
it, there I will be coming up against stuff that I would prefer not to come up against. I would prefer
Right.
not to
And
have
you're
to deal
doing it
with.
in service of the experience you want to have. And if we could just
Yeah.
go from A to B, that would be great.
Yeah, well, we'd all be doing it then, wouldn't we? And it would all,
Yep.
we'd have it done by lunchtime.
Yes.
Yay. Alison, I think we've done a brilliant job of talking about relationship with somebody else and relationship with self,
Yes.
and exploring boundaries that are arguably much more significant and important, and those that appear, at least on the surface, to be, insignificant
Well,
and
we don't even have
everyday.
to rate them. We don't have to compare them at all.
No, but I'm finding it interesting that we can look
Yes.
at alcoholism and Netflix and we can find lots
Yeah.
of common ground.
Yes. Because boundaries are that way, right?
Mm,
I think regardless of what the stakes are, right? A
mm,
marriage. I
mm,
think your life is also big stakes, high stakes. Like the life you're creating in 2024 is also incredibly
mm,
huge.
mm.
So whether, it may feel like yours is small and this is big, I'm going to
It's different
challenge that.
content, isn't it? So the
Yes.
content is marriage, alcoholism, Netflix, future self, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the
Yeah.
content is really different. Thank you for distinguishing that. So
Mm,
that's really interesting, that the content can be anything. The sort
yes.
of principles, the guiding
Yes.
principles, the experience that we're going to have, the things we're going to come up against, there are common threads and themes there.
Yes.
My God, we're brilliant.
All right. Takeaway.
Takeaway. Oh, I think what I just said, that
Yeah.
that the content can be anything. It can be, how I'm training my dog, or, my relationship with Netflix, my relationship with myself, marriage, alcoholism, anything. And that there are these common themes. And I love the takeaway that you said of boundaries are, I know, what did you say? You said something like, I know I need to or want to put a boundary in place, or a boundary would be useful if I'm not having the experience of life that I want to have.
Yeah.
And that resentment is a really great little
Little
clue.
flag.
Mm,
Probably are doing things you don't want to be doing and then
yeah.
blaming everybody else for your choices.
What about you?
Um, the thing I wrote down was the difference between, well, we were talking about what are you gaining, what are you losing? And I was kind of like making notes, and then they all led down into the funnel of victim.
Mm,
That a boundary is the way we get out of victim. And my other takeaway is I don't really want to get out of victim because it's soup. I mean, you talk about indulgent.
mm,
Like, you're the problem, he's the problem, my
mm,
dogs are the problem, the president of the United States is the problem.
mm.
So much nicer to just point fingers and be like,
Yeah.
"Shh."
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
Cool.
why boundaries are hard because you have to take
Mm,
ownership. There it is.
yeah.
Boom. All right.
Cool. Great kickoff to the new year.
2024. Yes, it
Mm-hmm.
has been lovely spending time with you. Our
It
next
has been
podcast is
amazing.
scheduled for the time when we are in Costa Rica leading a retreat. So we'll
Okay.
have to see if we're going to do that one. Stay
Yeah.
tuned. See if we can do it
Yeah.
like with the rain and the birds and the jungle in the background. It'd be really cool, but I don't know that we're going to be able to pull it off.
We might
So
better do it before and then pre-schedule
I was just
its
thinking for the
publication.
listener,
Oh, thank you, the listener.
prepare
Thank
yourselves
you.
because we might be in the jungle the next time you see us.
Mm.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.
Do it.
Sayonara.